Hey, before you scroll, before you decide this isn't worth your time, just give me a moment. Because what I'm about to say isn't perfect. It's not rehearsed. It's real. We live in a world where love is fast, temporary, easily replaced. But what if, just for once, someone chose to stay? If you're here, if you're listening, maybe it's not by accident. Maybe somewhere deep inside, you still believe in something real. So if you love me, don't skip this, because this might be the most honest thing I ever say to you. If you love me, don't skip this. Not because I'm asking for attention, but because I'm asking for something far more rare: your presence, your honesty, your willingness to stay just a little longer, even when it would be easier to walk away. I know how this world works. I've seen how quickly people move on. One moment, you're everything. The next, you're just another memory buried under distractions, notifications, and new faces. Love has become something people consume, not something they commit to, and maybe we've both been guilty of that at some point. But what I feel right now, it's not temporary. It's not something I can just switch off or replace. It's quiet, but it's strong. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It just exists. Constant, patient, real. And I wonder sometimes if you feel it too, not in the loud moments, not in the easy conversations, but in the silence. In those seconds where nothing is said, but everything is understood, in the way your thoughts pause, even just for a second when my name crosses your mind, because love, real love, isn't always obvious. It doesn't always come wrapped in perfect words or grand gestures. Sometimes it shows up in the simplest ways, in staying when things get complicated, in listening when it would be easier to ignore, in choosing someone again and again, even when the world gives you every reason not to. So when I say, don't skip this, I'm not just talking about this moment. I'm talking about us, about what this could be if we didn't treat it like something disposable. I'm not perfect. I don't have all the right words all the time. I've made mistakes. I've overthought things. I've probably held back when I should have spoken up. But what I do have is something real, something honest. And that's not something I give easily. You see, I don't fall for everyone. I don't open up like this for just anyone. It takes something rare to make me feel like this. And somehow you did that without even trying. Maybe that's why it scares me, because when something actually matters, when it's not just another passing feeling, the risk becomes real. The possibility of losing it, of losing you, it's not something I can just brush off like it doesn't matter. But even with that fear, I'm still here, still choosing to speak, still choosing to stay, still choosing you in a world that constantly tells me not to get too attached, not to care too much, not to feel too deeply. And maybe that's the difference, because I don't want something temporary with you. I don't want to be just another chapter that ends without meaning. I want something that stays, something that grows, something that doesn't disappear the moment it gets difficult. I want the kind of connection that doesn't fade when the excitement settles. The kind that survives the quiet days, the uncertain moments, the times when things aren't perfect. Because that's where love proves itself. Not in the beginning, not when everything feels easy and effortless, but later, when things slow down, when reality sets in, when you have to decide consciously whether you're going to stay or let go. And I'm telling you, right now, I'm not here to let go, not without trying, not without giving this everything I have, not without being honest about what I feel, even if it's not convenient, even if it's not easy. So if you're listening to this, if you've made it this far, then maybe just something in you that doesn't want to skip this either. Maybe you feel it too. even if you haven't found the words yet. Maybe you've been holding back, protecting yourself, waiting for a reason to believe that this is something real. And I get that. I really do, because trusting someone, truly trusting them, isn't easy. It means risking disappointment, risking pain, risking the possibility that what you feel might not be returned in the same way. But it also means giving yourself a chance, a real chance, to experience something genuine, something that doesn't come around often. And that's what this is: not perfect, not flawless, but real. And in a world full of things that don't last, that's worth something. So I'm here, not asking for promises, not demanding anything from you, just being honest about what I feel. Because if you love me even a little, even in a way you don't fully understand yet, love is proven in silence, not words. We've all heard the words before. I care about you. I'm here. They sound right, they feel right, but over time, you start to realize something uncomfortable. Words are easy. Anyone can say them. Anyone can repeat them when the moment feels right, when emotions are high, when it's convenient. Words can be shaped into anything. They can comfort you, excite you, even make you believe in something that isn't really there. But silence is silence, doesn't lie. Silence is where the truth lies, not in what people say, but in what they do when there's nothing left to say, when the conversations slow down, when the excitement fades, when there's no audience, no pressure, no need to impress. That's where love shows itself. It's in the way someone stays connected to you without needing constant validation. It's in the way they remember the small things, not because you reminded them, but because you mattered enough to stay in their mind. It's in the way they show up, not just when it's easy, but when it's quiet, when it's inconvenient, when it would be simpler to disappear, because real love doesn't need to announce itself every second. It doesn't need to prove itself through endless words or grand speeches. It exists in the background, steady, consistent, unshaken by silence. And that kind of silence, it's not empty. It's full of intention, full of presence, full of meaning that doesn't need to be explained. You start to notice it in the pauses, in the moments where nothing is said, but you still feel understood, in the way someone listens, really listens, not just reading for their turn to speak, but actually hearing you. And that's rare, because most people are too busy trying to be heard, too busy filling every gap with no afraid that silence means something is wrong. But it doesn't. Silence only feels uncomfortable when something is missing, when the connection isn't real, when the feelings aren't deep, when the words are doing all the work instead of the actions. But when it's real, silence becomes something else. It becomes peaceful. You don't feel the need to force conversations or constantly check if the other person still cares. You don't question every pause or overanalyze every moment of quiet. There's a sense of understanding, a quiet agreement that what you have doesn't need to be constantly proven. It just is. And that's what I've been trying to understand: what exists between us when there are no words left to hide behind. Because I've seen both sides. I've experienced the kind of connection where words were everywhere: promises, compliments, reassurance. But when it came down to it, there was nothing underneath. The silence exposed everything that the words were trying to cover up. And I've felt the opposite too, where words were few, sometimes even imperfect, but the presence, the consistency, the quiet loyalty, it said more than anything else ever could. That's the kind of love that stays. Not the one that talks the most, but the one that remains when everything else fades. So I pay attention now, not to what's being said, but to what's being shown. When there's nothing to say, do you stay, or do you slowly drift away? Do you listen, or do you disappear into distractions? Do you make space for me in your life, even in the quiet moments, or only when it's convenient, when it fits your mood, when it doesn't cost you anything? Because that's where love is decided, not in the big declarations, not in the emotional highs, but in the stillness that follows. In the moments where effort is no longer exciting, where attention isn't being rewarded instantly, where you have to choose to care without expecting anything in return. That's where the truth shows up. And I'm not asking for perfect words. I'm not expecting you to always say the right thing or express everything perfectly. I'm just watching the silence, watching what you do with it. Because if your actions match your words, if your presence remains even when things are quiet, if you don't disappear when there's no pressure to stay, then I'll know that what you feel isn't just something you say, it's something you live. And that's all I've ever wanted. Not noise, not constant reassurance, not empty promises, just something real enough, strong enough, honest enough to exist, even in silence. Real connection is rare. Don't treat it as temporary. There are billions of people in this world, endless conversations, endless faces, endless chances to meet someone new. And yet, somehow, real connection still feels rare. Not the kind that looks good on the surface. Not the kind that's exciting for a moment and then fades just as quickly. I'm talking about something deeper, something that doesn't happen every day, something you don't just stumble into without meaning. Because most interactions, they pass. They come and go without leaving anything behind. You talk, you laugh, you share a few moments, and then life moves on like nothing ever happened. But sometimes something different happens. You meet someone, and it's not loud, it's not overwhelming, it doesn't try too hard to impress you. It just feels right. Like something clicks in a way you didn't expect. Like you don't have to pretend or perform or filter every thought before you say it. You just exist. And somehow that's enough. That's the kind of connection people don't talk about enough. The quiet kind. The one that builds slowly, naturally, without pressure. The one that doesn't rely on constant excitement to survive because it's rooted in something more stable, something more real. And the truth is, you don't find that often. You can spend years meeting people, talking to them, trying to build something meaningful, and still feel like something is missing. Like no matter how much effort you put in, it never quite reaches that level of depth, that level of understanding. So when it finally happens, when you actually feel that connection, it's not something you should take lightly. But people do. They treat it like it's replaceable. Like if this doesn't work out, there's always someone else, always another option, always another chance to start over. And maybe that's true, but not every connection is the same. Not every person will understand you the way someone else does. Not every conversation will feel effortless. Not every presence will bring you that sense of calm, that sense of being seen without having to explain yourself. That kind of connection, it's not something you can just recreate whenever you want. It takes timing. It takes openness. It takes two people being in the right place mentally and emotionally, willing to see each other for who they really are, not just who they pretend to be. And even then, it's not guaranteed. That's why it matters. That's why it shouldn't be treated like something temporary, something you can walk away from without thinking twice, something you assume will always be there if you decide to come back later. Because sometimes it won't. Sometimes the moment passes. The connection fades, not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't valued the way it should have been. And once it's gone, you don't just get it back. You can try, you can reach out, you can hope things go back to the way they were, but something changes. Something shifts. And even if the connection is still there, it's not the same as it was before, because real connection needs care. It needs attention, not constant, overwhelming attention, but consistent, genuine effort. It needs honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. It needs patience, especially when things aren't perfect. It needs two people who understand that what they have isn't something to take for granted. And that's where most people get it wrong. They wait until it's gone to realize what it meant. They assume that if something feels natural, it doesn't need effort, that if something is real, it will just survive on its own. But nothing survives without intention, not even the most genuine connection. It doesn't mean you have to force things or turn it into something complicated. It just means you don't ignore it. You don't neglect it. You don't treat it like something you can come back to whenever you feel like it. Because real connection isn't something that waits forever. It's something that exists in the present, something that grows if you nurture it and fades if you don't. And I think about that, about what we have, about what this is, and I can't see it as something temporary. I can't treat it like just another moment that will pass and be forgotten, because it doesn't feel like that. It feels rare. It feels like something that doesn't happen often, something that shouldn't be taken lightly, something that deserves to be seen for what it is, not perfect, not flawless, but real, and that alone makes it worth holding on to, makes it worth protecting, makes it worth choosing, even when it would be easier not to. Choosing someone every day is what makes love real. People think love is a feeling, something that happens to you, something you fall into without control. And at the beginning, maybe that's true. It comes naturally, effortlessly, without effort or intention. You feel it, and it feels enough, but what happens after that? When the excitement settles, when the emotions aren't as intense, when reality starts to show up in ways you didn't expect, that's where most people get confused, because they start to think something is wrong, that the feeling is fading, that maybe it wasn't real to begin with. But love doesn't disappear, it changes. It stops being something that just happens and becomes something you choose every day. Not because you have to, not because you're forced to, but because you decide that this person, this connection, is worth staying for. And that choice, it's not always easy. There are days when everything feels simple, when being with someone feels natural, light, effortless. But there are also days when it's complicated, when misunderstandings happen, when emotions don't align, when silence feels heavier than usual. And in those moments, you have a decision to make. Do you pull away, or do you stay? Do you look for something easier, or do you work through what's in front of you? Because real love isn't built in perfect moments. It's built in the ones that test you, the ones that challenge your patience, your understanding, your willingness to keep showing up even when things aren't ideal. That's where choice matters the most. Not when everything is going well, but when it isn't. Anyone can stay when it's easy. Anyone can say they care when there's nothing at risk. But choosing someone when it requires effort, when it requires understanding, when it requires you to look beyond your own perspective and actually see them for who they are, that's different. That's real. And it's not about sacrificing yourself or losing who you are. It's about balance. It's about knowing when to hold on and when to give space. It's about respecting each other's individuality while still choosing to build something together. Because love isn't about ownership. It's about commitment, a quiet, consistent decision to keep someone in your life, not out of habit, not out of convenience, but because they matter to you in a way that goes beyond temporary emotions. And the truth is, there will always be other options, other people, other possibilities, other paths you could take. That doesn't stop. But what makes something meaningful, what makes it real, is when you look at all those options and still choose the same person. Not once, not just in the beginning, but again and again and again. Even when it's not exciting, even when it's not perfect, even when you have doubts, when things feel uncertain, when you don't have all the answers. Because choosing someone doesn't mean everything is always clear. It doesn't mean you'll never question things or wonder what could happen if you made a different decision. It just means that despite all of that, you stay present, you stay honest, you stay willing to keep building something instead of walking away the moment it becomes difficult. And that's what I believe in. Not just the feeling, but the choice behind it. Because feelings can fade, they can change, they can be influenced by time, distance, and circumstances. But a choice, a real choice, is intentional. It's something you wake up with and decide to carry with you, even when the feeling isn't as strong as it once was. And that's what gives love its strength. Not how it starts, but how it continues. Not how intense it feels in the beginning, but how consistent it remains over time. So when I think about love, when I think about what it really means, I don't see it as something temporary or fragile. I see it as something built slowly, carefully, through decisions that are made every single day. And if it's real, if it truly matters, then choosing each other won't feel like a burden. It will feel like something you want to do, something you're willing to do without needing to be reminded. Because at the end of it all, love isn't just something you feel. It's something you prove every day by choosing not to walk away.